If you're going to make robots, make sure they can't merge. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys, DC Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, Falcum, Abominus. After building a new moon to host his gladiatorial battles, Mongol captured and imprisoned the Justice League. Mongol then forced Hiro Akamura, also known as the Toyman, to create a group of robots to combat the League, each specifically designed to exploit their weaknesses. Unbeknownst to Mongol, Toyman built in a fail-safe trigger, which merges them into a single massive mech robot. Batman discovered the trigger, and the Justice League escaped War Moon in the newly formed Falcum Abominus. Now here's a robot that you could say is greater than the sum of its parts. Before we get a closer look at the Dark Knight's Metal, Falcum Abominus, I'd like to first also thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys while I go ahead and grab my tape measure here. They were kind enough to provide this sample of the Falcum Abominus that we could have a look in this review. Now, it's up to you as to whereabouts I should stop the tape measure. For all intensive purposes, if we go to the part that's Batman, it would be about there, but then technically there are also these spikes on the back of its body, but those are posable. Maybe what we'll do is we'll stick with the head for right now. Falcum Abominus stands about 9.5 inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 23.5 centimeters tall. Seeing as Batman found a way, Batman always finds a way to get out of a sticky situation. I did want to bring in at least a Batman for comparisons. For this, I just decided to use the blue-cowled Hush Batman. And if we do line up the top of Batman's cowled ears, you can see that he goes only to about the elbow area of Falcum. The accessories for Abominus, the figure comes included with a trading card and a display stand. How about we actually look at the display stand first? Not really much to report here. It's just the same circular display stand, once again with the DC logo printed down below, and once again one neighboring peg to the far corner. This can plug into the underside of Abominus's feet, and while they didn't use necessarily the mega-sized display stands, it doesn't really need necessarily, I would say, a stand unless you're looking to put in any more dynamic pose than what I've got going right now. And considering that this thing for its size does have as much posability as one would come to find with all the DC Multiverse figures, maybe in fact don't discard this just yet. We're going to hold on to it for a little bit later. As I already mentioned though, the figure comes included as well with a trading card. And what few pages this thing actually appears in the comics, blink and you might even just miss it. It's an amalgamation essentially of all the superhero robots that Toyman actually builds. And then again, like there's that failsafe where they basically merge together via like Voltron. So you again got all the characters' traits all sort of represented here. And I love the idea that Batman is the head. Batman's always been the head of Justice League, whether somebody believes it's Superman or not. Flip around though to the back. One thing I did want to say though, I'm glad to see that they've used once again source material for again what few times we actually see Abominus in the comics. Flipping though around to the back, the real name is N.A. Obviously it's a robot, and then there's a paragraph read. You can pause and read for yourself if you so wish. Okay, I'm gonna put that to the side. We'll be storing that away with the rest of my trading cards. Then on to Abominus. Now again, I'm really impressed with this. It's a stupid concept, really, when you think about it. It's just the idea that Toyman builds all these superhero robots that all just happen to look and have the traits of those superheroes, but then there's a failsafe they essentially just merge together and build sort of like a Megazord from Power Rangers. It's stupid, but it's stupid in a fun way. And I'm glad to see that this thing actually found its way to a plastic figure. And all in all, from head to toe, this thing is pretty impressive. I don't think it's something that everyone's going to get on board, but I will say, though, if you get the chance to see this thing in the wild, hopefully the reviews like this will convince you. The stupidity of a figure existing like this, all the more makes it that much cooler. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and pick up this figure right now. So essentially what it is, again, it's all these hero robots, and you can kind of see by looking at them right away, not only by the shape, maybe less the shape and more the color, what character heroes these are represented by. So again, you've got your Wonder Woman here to one side, you've got Cyborg here on the other side, of course, for the other serviceable hand. Then you've got Superman there making up the torso with, again, somewhat of a Superman shield in the middle there. Batman obviously forms the head. And then down below, you've got Green Lantern. I believe you've got Aquaman, and then Flash represented here on the other side. Flash really is the one that benefits the most by actually having something that moves on it. These tiny little blades. while maybe not painted as well as maybe they should. The yellow, I think, is one thing that really could have used a little bit more. Maybe a second pass, if anything, because you can kind of really see like the darker of the plastic kind of peeking its way through. But at least Flash's robot does have little these moving kind of buzzsaw blades that move back and forth. They don't have necessarily any posability where you can hinge them out, but at least you can move them back and forth. Getting, though, a closer look at the head sculpt, again, which would have been Batman's mech robot, essentially. Now, the neat thing about this is on the side, it sort of looks like there should be a hinge joint. Maybe that's not the neat thing. Looking at the joint that's on the side of the mouth, I do kind of wish, the one thing I wish this figure actually could have had was mouth articulation. Because it does kind of tease you when you're looking at it. You can kind of see, like, there's a peg right there to the side, and yet you can't open and close the mouth. The mouth is a very soft plastic, so any little effort to move the mouth, I guess if there was even technically a peg joint in there, the mouth probably would be very hard, and you wouldn't really get a lot of range of motion anyways. But I kind of do wish that the head could have had a little bit of posability going for it. This lifeless looking head that has no eyes to speak of is just a neat looking design for a robot head. And of course, this part of this being represented by Batman, you got more of the spikier shoulders being used of a softer plastic material. So they're pretty good when it comes to moving them out of the way. The thing about them, though, is there's nothing that really attaches them to anything. So while there are hinge joints here, like a hinge joint, I should say, like a ball joint right in the middle there, these side flaps are only attached by this little bit of plastic. You can see how soft the plastic is already. So just, though, be careful when it comes to moving like the arms out, for example. I would imagine if you're pushing against this plastic, there could be a potential for this to split. So be careful of that. One little bit of assembly that was required when you get this first out of the plastic prison is that you have to take these spikes, and they vary in size. Of course, you got the longer ones here at the top, and then of course they kind of decrease in size. You got the Papa blade, the Mama blade, and little baby blade down below here. They all attach the exact same way. They're all by ball joints. So it's nice to see that each one of them independently move. Remember, I did say at the beginning of this review that I wasn't sure how tall the figure would be. Technically, you could bring these down past the point of the head, and the head would really be the highest thing. I myself would much rather have the blades be sticking out a lot more than what I've got, so we're just going to bring those out just a little bit. Some nice, really cool detailing on the back of the figure's body, giving a good chance for the paint department to kind of add some additional silver added in there as well. That looks really nice. Of course, you got silver represented here on the cyborg arm. The cyborg arm doesn't have anything that, like a feature or anything like that. It would be fun if they had found a way to make this end illuminate. Maybe that could be something that they could do for like a gold edition. But it's a really nice detailed cybernetic arm, very much again looking like something that would come from Cyborg. The other side, obviously, in this case, I say obviously, but this side would be like Wonder Woman's arm. And you've got, again, the silver represented mostly for the forearm, but then you've got some additional yellow that's added in there as well. These chompers on the end, like the shoulders we looked at earlier, are fairly soft plastic. The paint probably, again, like I would say, like the yellow is the only thing that really should have used a second coat, a second pass. Somebody with a paintbrush with a little more time on their hands, just, again, just to fill out some of that. Because, like, the yellow, unfortunately, is the thing that kind of suffers the most here on this. You can kind of really see, like, the coloring of the plastic peeking its way through. But, considering that this is a robot, after all, it's not a character's suit, for example, I could kind of maybe buy into the idea that maybe the paint isn't going to be the cleanest when it comes to a robot's body. Again, like all of these parts would kind of come together. Superman's main body, Superman is represented here from the torso for Abominus. You got the Superman shields, they're represented here in the front, kind of nicely done in a crimson red. And then you've got the majority of this being in a nice metallic blue. Further down from that, of course, the one side, I think is just Green Lantern. Maybe, actually, now that I think about it, this side here, I believe, was Aquaman. And then again, the other side would have been then the Flash. Aquaman, from the one side here, again, you've got a really cool detailed looking foot. You can really see as well, like, there's peg holes still there. For all intents and purposes, you could still plug it onto a display stand. But, other than just putting in any other dynamic pose than just having it standing straight, it has more than enough footprint to be able to accommodate a standing pose. I mean, while looking at it, though, it does sort of look like the way that they've designed the back heels and the way they've designed the front of the Flash's feet, that you almost feel like this part should be flipped around, but that's not the case. It's just the way it's been designed. Then the other side, we've already looked at the fact that the Flash does have moving blades, so that's fun to see that they actually took the time to add those little things, because technically they could have just, obviously for the sake of assembly and making this in the factory, it'd be a lot easier just to mold these as separate parts and then attach them after the fact than molding this as being something that then sticks further out from the foot. But again, you've got the little lightning bolt there represented. The lightning bolt isn't, again, when it comes to yellow, the brightest of things around. But still, again, for the fact that this is a mechanized monster, essentially, I could kind of get behind the idea that maybe the paint isn't going to be the brightest like you would get, for example, like with a superhero costume. Flip around again to the back so you can kind of see all the stuff that's going on here. Yeah, there probably is some opportunities where they probably could add a little bit of silver. I'm sure any customizers out there probably could give a nice dark wash to this to really bring a lot of the details out here. But from a sculpt standpoint, first, I'm so glad that we did get ourselves Falcum Abominus. The fact that a character who only, again, makes appearances for just a few panels, would then eventually be released as a plastic figure. The fact that I also really like Voltron and to some extent Power Rangers back in the day. I just kind of like the idea that you've got hero robots all sort of coming together. For the articulation here for Abominus, let's start first with his head sculpt. It is on a ball joint, so it can rotate all the way around. The head, by the way, though I did make mention of it with the shoulders, the head is also a fairly soft plastic. So you can move it back and forth, you can move it up and down, and you can also rock it back and forth as well. Still, though, again, I feel like there's a tease by putting a little peg joint there, right there. You can see it. And yet there's no articulation here in the mouth. That's okay. As for the arms do go forward and back. You can bring them also out as well. You can rotate them at the bicep. That's the same also as well when we get the cyborgs. You can rotate them the exact same way. There seems to be only just a single hinge on both the arms. So again, like you can bend it on both the sides. And when it comes to the upper torso is on a very generous ball joint. A lot more generous than I was really expecting. The figure also doesn't have a waist swivel. It's all kind of, so like this part is all essentially one part, and then you've got the top torso that rests on top of it via ball joint. So again, like you can move it quite a lot more than really what I was expecting. Can't obviously overlook the fact that the spikes are, again, those are individually ball jointed. So again, you can rotate all of them times then 6. Legs do split out, about that far of a splits. You can also take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. It's quite a generous swivel at the top of the thigh. Single hinge, double hinge, I should say, on the knee. And then when it comes to the ankles, you again move them up and down this way. You can also rock back and forth. And there is no toe articulation. But again, for how busy the sculpting is for the tops of the feet, I can't really imagine how they would have been able to incorporate toe articulation. He is still, again, pretty articulated when all things are said when it comes to a figure this size and this busy when it comes to a sculpt. There's nothing symmetrical at all for this guy either. Everything is all over the place when it comes to a design. And again, it looks like it did in the comics. I think they had to make a few little luxuries when it came to some of the sculpting, because again, when it comes down to taking, like, for example, a source material, we only see a few little panels of this, and we kind of get it only from the front and kind of somewhat from the side. You really don't get the chance to kind of see it all the way around. So, of course, when it came to McFarlane's talented artists, they kind of had to go in there and fill in some of the gaps that wasn't in there in the comic. But I'm so glad that we did get ourselves a Falcum Abominus. Don't overlook this guy. And maybe while looking at this on a store shelf, you may think to yourself, why? What is this? Why would I ever want this in my collection space? Believe you me, my friends, you would want this in your collection space. It is one fun-looking figure. Really, the fact that this thing appears as little as it does in Dark Knight's Metal, it's absurd, the idea that this thing would ever have even made it to a plastic figure, and yet I also think about the stuff that McFarlane was doing in the early 2000s. Not just the Spawn stuff, but all the little sublines that he was doing as well. This is, come on, this is right up Todd's alley. Whether he actually had somebody from DC nudging him in the gut saying, listen, you got to make Abominus, or he just literally was flipping through the pages and said, hey, guys, I know who we're making for the next figure. Oh, who is it, Todd? Falcum Abominus. Sorry, who is it? Yeah, you got to look at the 3 or 4 panels of this thing. Thing literally is only in a few pages. I think he's like in 1 or 2 pages, and that's it. And yet it was enough to plant the seed in McFarlane's mind, whether again he had the little nudging of DC or not, to actually produce a figure of this, and I'm so glad that they did. There are a few little details that got overlooked if you look at kind of, again, the source material translated to plastic, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close, and I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised to see this thing is as articulated as it is. Because I was really expecting, if anything, he'd be articulated at the top of his legs and maybe in its arms and maybe just have like a single hinge in his elbows and that's it. But this thing is as posable, maybe if anything, more posable than a DC Multiverse figure. Job well done. Job well done. Whether there was persuasion to make this figure from a DC affiliate or if McFarlane just looked at the page and said, yeah, guys, we got to make Abominus. Either way, I'm so glad that this thing got released. Don't overlook this guy. even if you guys can find him in the wild at maybe a markdown price, I think it's one of those figures that maybe in the packaging may not lure you in, but the moment you get him out of the packaging, you're going to have a lot of fun with this figure. What do you guys think of Falcum Abominus? Let me know down below in the comments section. And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly on board to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. We will be also, FYI, looking at some more McFarlane Toys reviews, so those will be coming your way in the pipeline, so make sure you're coming back to this channel on a regular basis. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.